Hey everybody, this is the 20-gallon tank in my fish room that I have been calling my Angelfish Tank. I did have an angelfish in this tank among a few other fish, and little by little I've moved them to other tanks, and now I'm pretty sure this tank is empty. There might be a little baby fish swimming around hiding somewhere, but I don't think so. And I am actually now just noticing that I've got all these little gnats or something flying around on the surface. I'm not really sure where they've all come from. I've never noticed them in this tank before. I do have the little, I think they're called springbacks or springtails or something. They're little teeny insects that live around leaves and stuff on the surface of the water. And so if you've ever seen those little tiny things on the surface that seem to spring and bounce and jump all over the place, those are little tiny insects. And again, I can never remember whether it's springback or springtail. I think it's springback. I think springtail is a motorcycle. So anyway, these are not those. I don't know what these are. These look like soil gnats or something, but they look like the nymph version of them or something. They're all pale white instead of black. Interesting. Anyway, the whole point of this video is that now that the tank is empty, I'm tearing it down and we're going to rebuild it. Don't know what I'm going to do with it. I've mentioned in previous videos that my regular viewers will know that I've got a sort of certain style that I go with. I've got the same kind of rocks and woodwork that, I collect here locally, so it's always the same kind of rocks. We don't, the kind of rocks I have out in my yard don't change over time. And so basically all the stuff that goes in my tanks tends to look the same, but each tank is unique in its own way, and we're going to do this one up a little bit differently. I think the Java is going to come out of there altogether. I think I'm going to go with just a simple piece of Anubias growing out of something in the center. I'm going to do a few rocks, and maybe we'll go out today, rummage around in the stream, see if we can't find a good piece of woodwork or something. It's about lunchtime now. I got the day off, and so I figured I would just go ahead and get this tank drained. We're going to get it cleaned up. I'm going to sterilize it, like really sterilize it. We're going to clean it out, basically start from scratch. I'm going to have to recycle the filter. More than likely, I'm going to clean all that out just to get all of everything out of this tank that's in here. All that cyanobacteria that grows and all that stuff you see growing on the Java fern. I'm just going to wipe everything out. I've even got some weird, there's a good example of them right there. I'm not even sure what these are, but I've got these weird sort of long squiggly things. I've watched them, and I'm not seeing any movement from them. They don't appear to be worms of any type. I did touch one, and it just came free from the glass and floated off into the water. And it didn't wiggle or squiggle or anything. So it doesn't look like detritus worms, but it might be something similar. It might be some kind of worm. It just doesn't really seem like a worm to me. And when you start really looking around the tank, you'll notice I've got them in a lot of places, these sort of white squiggly things. So again, no idea what they are, but whatever they are, I'm stripping this tank down. Again, we're going to fill it back up with water. We'll pull all the plants out of there. I'm going to run hydrogen peroxide through it. We're going to really just sterilize this tank and get everything all cleaned out of it in a way that I'm not able to do when there's fish in it. So let me get on with it. I don't know where we're going to go from here video-wise, whether we're going to be out at the stream looking for wood or we're going to be putting hydrogen peroxide in this tank or something. I'm just kind of winging this. I didn't really intend on shooting any video to begin with, but since I'm doing it, I may as well document it. So there you go. Sit back, relax, and we'll see where we go from here. But we're going to get this tank up and running with some new fish and stuff in it here real soon. All right, we are now empty. Didn't find any fish. I wasn't expecting to, but I didn't. And I have noticed a few little squidgelies moving around on the glass here and there. But those weird lines we were looking at originally are still right where they were. They still haven't moved. Again, don't think those are worms. But I have seen some little things squiggling along on the glass here and there. As long as this tank's been up and running, it's not surprising that there's little oddball things living in here. We can see all these gnats and stuff flying around. I'm still really curious to where all these gnats came from all of a sudden. Maybe when I took the fish out of the tank, maybe they had been keeping on top of keeping the population of those insects under control, and once they got out of there, it exploded. So I guess the next step is going to be to take the tank outside and really clean it out and get it scrubbed out. I was considering just filling it up with water and running some hydrogen peroxide through it, but I feel like if I've got it this torn down, I may as well just do it right and get everything out of there, clean those rocks off, or even fill the tank back up with bleach water. If I do that, I'm going to probably pull the substrate out first. I don't know, but we're going to do a really serious cleaning since I've got it drained. The filter's off. I've already taken the heater out of the tank, and all of the Java fern is already in a bucket with a bunch of hydrogen peroxide right now. If I can't get that clean enough, I'm going to go ahead and just destroy it and throw it away, but hopefully I'll be able to get that hydrogen peroxide cleaned up enough that we can get it back in the tank somewhere and looking good. So sit tight, we'll see where we go from here. And we went right here. We're just right out in the backyard, and we're going to go ahead and get this rinsed out, and I'm going to probably use the hydrogen peroxide. I don't want to kill the plant that's in there, but I do want to get this tank nice and cleaned and sterilized. I'll probably use a razor blade and get the glass scraped down. We've got all of the wood and the rocks and everything taken out and put in this bucket. So this is actually the amount of rocks that I have in this tank. We had this piece of wood. You can see all that cyanobacteria that's growing on it. That is just from a piece of branch I cut from the yard here. And then we have all of these rocks. So some of them are pretty good size. Now imagine if those are all the rocks that I had in a 20-gallon tank. Imagine how many I have in some of my bigger tanks. And none of you ever saw it, because this is long before I ever started my YouTube channel, but my very first 55-gallon tank that was once my Angelfish tank, I now call my 55-gallon tank, that was filled about half full of rocks of this size, making dozens and dozens of little tiny caves and nooks and crannies, and that's how I actually started out. I'm honestly surprised I never blew the bottom of the tank out just from piling rocks in there. And over time, of course, I got more and more nervous, and I reduced the rocks more and more, and now my tanks all tend to look a little more reasonable. But that's still my idea of reasonable as far as the amount of rocks to have in a 20-gallon tank. So I'm going to keep on keeping on. We're going to get that sterilized. We will get these rocks sterilized. I don't know which one of them or how many are going to go back in the tank when I put it back together, but we'll, again, play it by ear. The putting it back together, the creative part, is the fun part. This is the tedious, getting it cleaned up bit. So I'll see you in a little bit. All right, everybody, I think this is probably where we're going to leave it today. I've got the tank cleaned out and scrubbed out. I basically took a hose and really squirted out all of the gravel and substrate, and then I poured all the filthy water out of the tank, and then I did it again. I did that several times until it was fairly clean running water when I did it. I then let the tank sit with hydrogen peroxide in the water for about an hour while we went and took a walk in the afternoon. When I came back, I scrubbed down the glass with a scrub brush. I then used my little melamine sponges. They are sold under the brand name Magic Eraser. And I use those along with hydrogen peroxide, just the regular old 3% stuff you get at the grocery store, none of the industrial strength stuff, but just the regular old 3% hydrogen peroxide. But I didn't use any water. I just used the straight 3% hydrogen peroxide on the little melamine sponges, and I wiped all the glass down, got all that done. Once I was finished with that, I topped the tank back off. We got a bunch of hydrogen peroxide back in there, and the fact that you can see so few bubbles coming up out of the substrate lets me know I've already done a pretty good job of getting all that sterilized. But what I also did was set the filter up, and I have that running again. I scrubbed out all the biomedia. I took the filter pad off, so it's just the frame in there, and I'm just going to let it run for the rest of the evening while I get on with cooking dinner. And that way we will sterilize everything that's inside the filter, and we'll be able to get started on doing that. So while I should say before I get around to cooking dinner, while I'm preheating the grill, we are also going to sterilize all of the rocks that were in the tank. So I already gave them sort of a good rinsing and rubbing and scrubbing with the hose, and now we're just going to bring them up to temperature so that there's no living anything on there. There's not going to be microbial life, there's not going to be algae, there's not going to be cyanobacteria. It's going to be sterile once I take it out of here. You can already hear the hissing and sizzling. Now I will say that if certain kinds of rocks get enough moisture within them, and sitting underwater in an aquarium for several years is a good way for rocks to absorb a lot of moisture. If that moisture in those rocks gets heated very quickly and boils and tries to expand and has nowhere to go, you can sometimes have, a lot of people will say rocks can explode. Maybe the word explode is a bit hyperbolic, but you can have the rocks pop and little chips of rocks and flakes of rocks will come off of there, and it can take out an eye or do, you know, other little minor damage if it hits you. I've never seen anything serious come of it, but that is something to be aware of. So first of all, I've got the temperature set very low, so it's just going to slowly bring these rocks up to temperature, and we're only going to leave them in there for about 20 minutes or so. And then the other thing, of course, is they're going to be under there, so if they do pop or break or snap or anything else, it's not going to bother anybody. So there you go. You're going to have to subscribe or tune back in later if you want to see whatever becomes of this, because as I said, this is going to be the end of where we stop for today. So you got the process of me getting it torn down and cleaned out, and it could very well be a few days before we get around to actually setting it back up and putting rocks back inside. I have no idea what I'm going to do with this tank yet, but I wanted to get it cleaned out, and we did. So there you go. All right, everybody, thanks for watching. Make sure you're subscribed, and I will see you real soon in the next one.